thou that sleepest, arise from the dead.
Read the Bible, you'll find out that God's not too happy with what's going on around us.
Redeem the time, because the days are evil.
The Bible has not changed.
Boldly proclaim the restoration and preservation of Christian values in America.
Satan has brainwashed a whole nation.
As goes the church, so goes the nation.
Nobody's convicted of anything anymore.
And now, here's Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. What a show. And we do have an incredible show for you today.
We do every week.
Yes, we do. We do. Two great guests, two optimists. Oh, I'm going to tear them apart. What are those? What are those? Don't they know that behind every rainbow there's a cloud? Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Truth versus the law. Your day in court today, folks. Phase 5, stage 5, opportunity number 5 in our January series. We're going to put the justice system on trial. Can we depend on the justice system? Can we depend on the legal system? You're about to listen to 2 hours of opinion and entertainment supplied by Last Call Radio. Mr. Anderson and I are not doctors, lawyers, politicians, professional journalists, nor do either of us hold a degree, a doctorate in anything. Not that that would make any difference. That's our opinion, of course. We only ask that you personally and or corporally not take our statements or those that we voice from others personal, nor do we recommend that you act on them as if they're facts, although they might very well be just that. Facts. But again, that's our opinion. You're not required to listen to, act on, repeat anything that you hear today, nor assume, again, that they are facts or that any information we present is by no means meant to harm or threaten anyone. I want to give that out today because we're going to play a short video clip. We're doing this 5-part series, January 2022, to kind of alert you all to the things that you can do. The 5 items that we presented, not totally inclusive. There's others out there. Just 5 that come to mind that we seem to deal with on a daily basis, like today's legal system. And in our presentations, our worst fear is that we don't have to go through another civil war, and that can be avoided. Or it can be inevitable. Speculation. I don't know. I hope not. I don't think so. That's why I'm presenting what we're presenting to you today. We're going to give you a short clip. And this clip is made to wake you up, hopefully, but to make you think as well. And if you would, Mr. Anderson, go ahead and play the clip. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call, and good morning again.
Certainly our government in Washington, D.C. has been trampling the Constitution and acting unlawfully for a long, long time. At what point does that require action? I think that's a very difficult question. And it does have to be something that I think God directs us towards. You know, we have to be willing to put up with a lot of abuses, you know, as the Declaration of Independence speaks to, a long train of abuses and usurpations. I think that right now we are at a place where folks that think the way we do haven't really done the work locally and are just now really beginning to refocus away from national politics and starting to think about doing the work locally, politically. So I think there still is a tremendous amount of opportunity for us to redress our grievances through the political process that we need to first exhaust before we start thinking about an appropriate time to use force. The times we're living in are not times where you can have hotheads or guys who lack discernment and who are just itching for a fight. But I would say if we're not training now, we'll be ill-equipped when that time does come. So I think it's important. And that's, again, what the purpose of the Second Amendment was, a well-regulated militia that common citizens would be training on a regular basis together so that should any threat arise, that they were prepared to deal with that threat. while also at the same time working through the political process, working to engage the culture, working to change hearts and minds through the culture, and trying to win politically at the local level. And I think we really haven't even put significant effort into that. And so I think now a lot of different people, God is really, I think, moving the hearts of a lot of people that direction to start focusing on the local political situation. And so we'll see what that brings.
So we're not talking about things to be taken lightly. We're not talking about things to puff our chests out. We're talking about the very real possible reality that we have to take up arms against our own tyrannical government. And are we prepared to do it and win?
Jason Storm, Defy Tyrants. He's not recommending taking up arms, but is he issuing a warning? We have to stop waiting for somebody else to do this. That somebody else is in the mirror every morning when you look in. Every morning. That is you. What can you do? What have you done? During each program over the past 5 weeks, we've given you the history and the status of critical areas, asking the question, where can we go from here on those areas? What are the best options? Where do you best apply our limited resources? And how do we do that? Through all 5 of these stages, we're emphasized doing, and that does not include barking. The very first Saturday in January 1st, we interviewed Matt Torella, author of the book, The Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrate. And we learned about individual responsibility. And it is we the people. And we have public servants. They aren't our rulers. We call them leaders, but they're still public servants. And they take an oath to the Constitution. And if a higher authority does not obey the Constitution, I'm going to be bringing Mike Peruko on the program in a few minutes. The American view, if you will, the constitutional view. And by the way, the root of the Constitution is in righteousness. It's in natural law, the law of nature, and nature's God. And we can never forget that. We have a new Supreme Court justice coming up. Are we looking for their opinions on natural law, or are we looking at their skin color? And which is more important? Matt Torella, The Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrate. Then we had Sheriff Mack on. And we talked about interposing the sheriff, the highest office in the land. What is their duty? What is their role? They also take an oath to the Constitution of the United States. Then we have Pastor David Whitney on. And he talked about the church and the responsibilities of the church. And personally, I have petitioned, as well as Mr. Anderson, as well as our good friend, Coach Dave Dobemar, and others. We've petitioned the church to please engage the culture. Churches don't get involved in politics, right? But Christ did. Yeah. Who did he talk with? And politics is like oxygen, like the air. You're going to have to take a breath, folks. You cannot hold your breath forever. You're going to be breathing that in. And you can control the air that you're going to be breathing in. Or you're going to let somebody else control that air. Then we interviewed John Lazorick, co-founder of America Again, who educated us on the actual role of grand jury militia and talked about tactical civics. And what that role is. And today we're going to talk to a couple lawyers about the legal system and what their view is. 5 areas that you can affect. Now, I'm not discarding the family. As goes the family, so goes the nation. And when you interview Brad's going to make a very interesting comment about the family and its role and what we can do. I used to say, as goes the church, so goes the nation. But I thoroughly believe it, as goes the family, so goes the church. And as goes the church, so goes the nation. As goes the family, so goes the government. So goes the educational system. And if the family is broken, what can you do? So keep that in mind as we go through these 5 areas that we're talking about today. Because the family is absolutely critical in that course. Two hours of Christian Talk Radio with a Sting, BJ Edwards and Mr. Anderson. And I can't wait to get with Mike Peroutka. Mike is just incredible. I met him several years ago when he was running for president, and have followed him. I've got the American View up here. Here we go. Got the American View. Taking the course again, Mike. Taking the course again. Hey, Mr. Anderson, let's take a quick break. And once we take the break, let's bring Mr. Peroutka on and get on with the trial of Mike Peroutka and other lawyers who say the legal system can't help us get out of this.
Faith, discussion, and so much more. Last Call with BJ Edwards.
I got up this morning and I was running a little late. Of course, I stubbed my toe on the end of the bed. So I hobble on into the kitchen and I start to make myself some coffee, and I put my breakfast in the microwave, and about halfway through the coffee percolating, the microwave explodes. And I get my breakfast all inside the microwave, so I'm starting to clean the microwave. I didn't make a good cup of coffee because of my preoccupation with the microwave. So I had to go ahead and make another cup of coffee, or another pot of coffee, clean up the microwave, and I sit down. Now, keep in mind, I'm a guy that says that behind every rainbow there's a cloud. Now, by the way, that can be a positive. You have to find trouble before you can resolve it, and it served me well in my business as an executive recruiter, because in that business I had to identify problems and get rid of them, and then put 2 people together and they live happily ever after. So I'm sitting down on the couch and I'm remembering a conversation I've had with Mike Peroutka and with Brad Dacus. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, now this isn't me, folks. This is God getting into my life and probably preparing for Michael Anthony Peroutka and my interview with Brad Dacus. I'm sitting there and going, well, you know what? They can't get any worse. It has to get better. Now, that's not like me, folks. I mean, I could keep on with this, but I'm going, no, this is going to get better. Michael Anthony Peruko is a former Anne Arundel County councilman, elected in 2014. He represented District 5, was elected council chairman in 2018. He graduated from Loyola College, now university, in Maryland in 1974 with a Bachelor of Arts in Business Administration. In 1981, he graduated from University of Baltimore School of Law. Served in legal capacity for the Department of Health and Human Resources before partnering with his brother Stephen in a law firm of Peroutka and Peroutka in Pasadena, Maryland. What a nice sounding town. What a nice sounding town. You should have some kind of a parade out there, Mike.
Well, we don't have a Rose Bowl.
Yeah. Mike Peroutka, welcome to Last Call. The question, I'm going to start off with an easy question. The question at hand is, first of all, we live in an amoral and unjust society. And how can our legal system be instrumental in obtaining future law and order, and what process or changes, if any, will be required to do so? And my main concern is whether we can expect to get justice. If so, can we afford to wait for the legal paint to dry Start you off with an easy question this morning, Michael.
Well, good morning. First of all, it's great to be with you. Thank you very much for your hospitality, for your
My pleasure,
invitation.
brother.
Glad to be here. Thank you. How can we fix the legal system, or how can we get the legal system? First of all, our understanding of it needs to greatly improve. I was on an interview yesterday morning for a local radio station, and the gentleman said, "How did we get to here? How did we get to here?" Well, I think that's a good way to phrase it.
Sleepy. Go ahead.
We got. Am I putting you to sleep already there?
No. That's how we got here, Mike. That's how we got here, by being asleep.
By being asleep. I see. Okay. Sorry. Yes. So by being asleep and by being willfully ignorant and lazy.
Yes, sir.
This is not the first time in history that this has occurred. This happens throughout history. And when you ask, can we get the legal system to work for us? Yes, but only if we have actually help and understand what law is, because this legal system is not lawful. What we're up against today is not lawful, because it's not based on the foundational principles. It's not based on the Word of God, like our legal system technically and historically should be. So we are we have some learning to do. One of the things, if I could just jump into this, if I could, just to give the illustration, Jim, if I asked this audience, if I asked everybody now, get ready, let's play a game of, imagine we were all in a room together. Let's say we were in an auditorium, and I said, let's all play a game of Crombus, okay? Crombus, okay? Let's all line up, push the chairs aside and the tables aside, and let's line up for a game of Crombus. Would you know how to do that? Would you know what equipment to bring to play Crombus? Would you know how to dress appropriately to play Crombus? Would you know how to keep score in Crombus? Would you know if the other side was breaking the rules, if your opponent was breaking the rules, how would you know, right? Well, the reason you couldn't do those things is because you don't know the rules of Crombus.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know the rules. What would be your expectation if you would prevail in this game of Crombus? I think it would be very low. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, how are you going to win this game? Yeah. And yet, when I was in front of a group a couple of weeks ago, and this happens all the time, I pass out a copy of the Maryland Constitution of the state of Maryland, which, by the way, incorporates by reference the Constitution of the United States. So it's really both. When I pass out a copy of the Constitution of Maryland, I ask the people, how many have ever seen this, held this, have ever read this? Invariably, if there's 40 people in the room, there's one person or no people. 0 people who have ever read it. Well, that's the rules to Crombus. How do you expect to win this or prevail in any way when you don't know the rules? And I God bless your activism. God bless the fact that you've woke. Thank you. Yes, here's the commercial, right? Because this is what we've been doing for 25 years. We're trying to raise up an army of people that think like Americans, because we don't think like Americans anymore. We've allowed ourselves to be indoctrinated way. And the one of the images we use in the course that I'm sure you might be familiar with is that if constitutional moral government was dry land and we were in a boat, we've been pushed way out to sea. We rowed out to sea, we've been drifted, or we've been intentionally pushed, and we've been out to sea so long that we don't know what righteous biblical constitutional government looks like anymore. And not only we've been out to sea so long that generations have turned over, and we don't even know that there is such a thing as dry land. We don't even understand that exists. So Thomas Jefferson famously said, if a nation expects to be ignorant and free, it desires what never was and never will be. Which is a nice little piece of poetry, but it's a profound statement, actually. If you don't know the rules, you're not going to win. You're going to have a very difficult time winning the game. It's not impossible that you could win, but you're making it very unlikely. So I think when we talk about the things that we can do, one of the first local things we can do is learn what we're talking about. And I'm just guilty as all. When I was an attorney I'd been an attorney for almost 20 years, and I started studying the Constitution, studying the actual history of America, which, by the way, the Constitution was not really taught to me in law school. What was taught in law school is ways to subvert, invert, pervert the Constitution. not really constitutional law. They have a course called constitutional law, but it's not about the Constitution. So one of the steps we have to do is to become educated. We're not going to win this game unless we know the rules, and then there are things to do beyond that, which revolve around doing things locally. And the guests that you've already had on, you've already described, are along that train of thought. Machuela with the interposition, et cetera. What we have to do, you don't have very much control over what Nancy Pelosi is going to do or say. You can't get her on the phone. You can write to her if you want to, but
I can't get my own congressman on the phone, brother.
Well, there you go. You're not going to get but you can get your county councilman on the phone.
Yeah. There you go.
You can get him on the phone, and you can bother him if you will. You can, they say that
Squeaky hinge.
Right. Well, they say that the politicians don't see the light until they feel the heat. So you got to make them feel the heat. We need to act locally, and I think just as an overall thought that maybe we could touch on later, we have to. You talked about the rainbow behind every cloud, or the cloud behind every rainbow. I take generally the different position, perhaps than you might, which is I am optimistic because I think there's a number of things we have going in our favor, and this is in no particular hierarchical order. But first of all, the documents of our country, the documents of our founding, they still exist. You can still see them. You can still read them. The philosophy of government on which the American experience is based is still there. It's not taught in schools, of course. It's not promoted in the mainstream media, et cetera, et cetera. But they still exist. And there's still plenty of oral history left where people who did understand. But I mean, they're working on stamping that out. But most importantly, Romans 8:28 has not been repealed. God still works all these things good for the people, for those who love Him and are called according to His purpose, and that's still going on. That's not been repealed. And kind of a corollary to that is that the book of James tells us that we should count these trials as joy, and that because these trials are the circumstances of our life. And if you think of it in the way that the particular circumstances of our life are a gift from the Almighty, they're a gift from God.
Yes, sir.
And while we also often argue and complain about the circumstances, this particular place in history He's put you, this particular understanding He's given you, these particular skill sets He's given you the assets of certain people that are in your lives and your relationships with people that are a gift to Him. So you have a lot of these things going for you in the circumstances of your life, but He didn't put you here. He didn't put you here 100 years ago or 100 years from now. He put you here right now, and if you're still breathing right now, then He's got a job for you. And my firm belief is that we need to get up every morning and not so much question why has this happened to me, but what. The question is what am I to do?
Amen.
What do you want me to do, Lord? What please guide, your word is a lamp before my feet and a light to my path. So please give me, and when we think of that, we think that God's word is a light. We think that, well, this is going to be a tractor beam going way down the highway and we can see clearly for miles and miles. No. It's no, that's not how it works. It's maybe it's a candle by which we're going to see the next step and the next step.
Yep.
And have the courage and conviction to take those steps. That's there. I am optimistic. For one reason, people I think are waking up. People are, we've been
They are.
talking about the American view of law and government for I don't know, for more than 20 years, and now our phones are ringing. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's a shame it took the world to end for our phones to start ringing, but they are, and we're teaching courses, and people all across the country are taking our course and take it online. There's a lot of places where it's done locally in person. This is not like if you take Institute on the Constitution's course, that's not going to be a silver bullet that's going to change things all by itself. But we need to be able to understand what law is and what law isn't. We're told things are law all the time that aren't law. By the way, I sent you I'm sorry I sent them so late to you, but I sent you about 3 or 4 examples of some of the things some of the language we've developed at Institute on the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
One, for example, is a letter to law enforcement officials that reminds them of what their job is and respectfully tries to point them in the direction of understanding what the law is, because many of them they have no idea what the law is, and they think they're doing what they're told, and that's that excuse didn't work at Nuremberg. I was just following the law. So so we're trying to put tools in the hands of people. We've developed a script that you can go to use to talk to your own county council, your own local government. We've also devised some local legislation that you can use, a sample local ordinance, right? That you can lobby for. So instead of just being reacting and complaining about what they're doing, let's tell them what they should do, and let's make it easier for them by putting the words in the script there. I think I also might have sent you something that explains. At least the thing I sent you might be Maryland specific, but parallels are in other states as well, having to do with why the face mask laws are not lawful. While there's these things are not lawful. Mandates, orders, edicts, proclamations, whatever you want to call them, they're not law. Laws made by the legislature, and in order for something to be law, it can't violate God's law.
Courts make law, don't they, Mike?
I don't think so. They think they do, though. They think they do. Many people do, but they don't. Courts. This is a huge problem, by the way, and it bears maybe a little bit of explanation since you brought that up. The understanding of law that George Washington, for example, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, the understanding of the source and nature of law that they had was that law was part of God's created order. When he created the universe, he created the not only the physical laws like gravity, etc., but the moral law as well. And these things are immutable. They don't change. These things are part of the created order. I'm sorry, I lost my place there.
Mike, what you were saying, and something that we've been born with is like an internal app. We know the difference between right and wrong. Natural law, we see that every day, and it confirms that, and it builds on that. And if we need any clarification, we can go to the Bible, and the Bible just lays it out for us. I mean, I'm being ornery here, but God probably said, well, you know what? Man just ain't getting it. I'm going to have to write it down for him so he can see it in writing. I've been showing him in nature all this time. They ain't been listening. So here, I'll put it in writing. So you're definitely without excuse now. Mike, we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to try to bring on one of our listeners because you mentioned addressing the sheriffs. Mm-hmm. And the listener has a very interesting exercise that he's been doing. I think that you'll appreciate. This is BJ Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. And if you would, Mr. Anderson, take us to a quick break.
Last call with BJ Edwards. Real talk about real life.
We're on the phone with Michael Peroutka, American View, Institute on the Constitution. We've been talking to Mike about what is going on in the world today. And Mike mentioned something about sheriffs. And I didn't get to see the information that you sent me, but I think one of our listeners, Tom, might be able to help us out in terms of what the sheriffs need to hear. Tom, are you with us?
I am, BJ. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you hear him okay, Mike?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, good. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, BJ, as you know, I've written 2 emails to all 88 county sheriffs in the state of Ohio. I got this idea basically from you and some other folks, and we were talking about the doctrine of the lesser magistrate.
Sheriff Mack might have helped.
Exactly. Too. Yep, absolutely. And the ability of our county sheriffs to intercede for us, to stand in the gap in case mandates from above, started saying that you would have to wear masks, into certain places. You'd have to be fully vaccinated in order to go into certain places. I want to know exactly where our county sheriffs stand. So I sent a couple of emails to the sheriffs, and I included in that a template of a letter that I asked them to post a version of on their website, basically saying that they will protect all the citizens of their county, regardless of whether they choose to be unvaccinated or vaccinated, or unmasked or masked, and be able to go into any kind of business, any government building, etc. And I received no responses on the first couple of times I sent the letter, which I thought was actually, I did get 2 written responses out of the 88 counties, and I got 1 telephone call from my own county sheriff. So only 3 out of the 88 county sheriffs responded. So this last week, I wrote a 3rd email. This time I sent the email to Attorney General Dave Yost for the state of Ohio. And I CC'd all 88 county sheriffs. And I got a little more response this time because they saw that I sent the email to Sheriff. Let me read you what I sent to Attorney General Yost here real quick.
All right, we'll let Mike comment after you do that. Go ahead.
Okay. Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost. First of all, thank you, sir, for your quick action last fall in working with 23 state attorney generals to send President Biden a letter on 16 September of 2021, insisting that he drop the vaccine mandates or risk legal action. Ohioans appreciate your courage to stand up to this obvious assault on our constitutional right to make our own medical decisions without fear of penalty. On 2 separate occasions over the past several weeks, I emailed the attached sheriff's letter to all 88 Ohio County sheriffs, requesting that they show the same kind of courage that you have shown by signing and posting on their websites a copy of the letter or a similar version in their own words as a pledge to all the citizens of their county that they will protect the rights of citizens who choose to remain unvaccinated and or unmasked, as well as those who choose to be vaccinated and or masked. I must say that I am bitterly disappointed by the lack of response from the vast majority of Ohio's county sheriffs. Only 3 sheriffs, Shelby County Sheriff Jim Fry, Brown County Sheriff Gordon Ellis, and Greene County Sheriff Scott Anger, were concerned enough to respond to my request on behalf of a very large contingent of unvaccinated and unmasked Ohioans who are understandably concerned about their right to work, go to schools, visit businesses, and conduct business with the government without being discriminated against because of their unvaccinated or unmasked status. That means that 85 of 88 Ohio County sheriffs are currently silent on this very important right that these sheriffs swore to protect and defend when they took their oaths to both the U.S. Constitution and the Ohio Constitution. Attorney General Yost, I respectfully request that you remind these 85 Ohio County sheriffs of the oaths that they took to support and defend the rights of all citizens in their county, and that you highly encourage them to publicly post their version of a sheriff's letter clearly stating that any vaccine mandates or mask mandates will not be enforced in their counties because it violates the constitutional rights of citizens of Ohio. And when I sent that email, again, I sent a copy of a letter, an actual letter that was posted by a sheriff in Wagner County, Oklahoma. His name's Sheriff Chris Elliott. And I used that as a template for my letter. And that's exactly what he did. He was bold enough to go out and post on his website a letter to put his citizens at ease, to let them know that he was going to protect their rights if they were going to be unvaccinated or unmasked.
Tom, thank you. I got to get back to Mike, but
Okay.
I think this is going to please Mike a little bit. Hang in there, Tom. We'll get back with you later.
Okay, because I have a couple of responses from a couple of the sheriffs. You want to hear them, but they're kind of interesting.
Okay, hang on.
Well, thank you, Todd. You're very much, I believe, in my view, you're very much on the right track. And by the way, we're thinking the same way, because one of the things, I'm not sure if it's one of the things I sent you, BJ, but we also have done a letter to a sample statement that a sheriff can make, and we also we based it on our own work, but also there are some sheriffs out there who have stood up, just like this gentleman is saying. For example, Sheriff Brad Rogers out in Elkhart, Indiana. He's a former sheriff. Now he's on the county commission, and they passed a resolution in the county commission saying that basically nullifying, saying that none of this face mask or vaccine stuff will be enforced, and excuse me, and the
Mike, what I like about
I'm
what
sorry, I'm so sorry. Excuse me. I just got interrupted there. I apologize. But anyway, there are some templates that have been developed that people can use, and I'll make sure that you have them. And I believe this gentleman is very much on the right track because he's acting locally, and he's asking for a local response to a local problem. We need these sheriffs. They have the ability, and if you had Sheriff Mack on, you know this, they have the ability to stand in the gap. They have the ability to stop these things, but they again need education. They very much don't know what law is or where law comes from. This is what I was talking about before when I interrupted myself. I'm sorry, but the source and nature of law is not what's taught in law schools. This is what the point I was making. Lawyers are trained up to understand that law comes from judges. Our founders were trained up to understand that law comes from God. So we've had more than a century of indoctrination in America over time and over generations that is try to take God out of the equation. And if it's the simple way to put that is, if there's no God, then there's no God-given rights. So we need to re-understand and restore this understanding of law and government and the source of law. Many things that they call law are not law. Just because somebody says something's law is not law. Yeah. And when they say that something has the force of law, that's a dead giveaway that whatever they're talking about isn't law. Because if it was law, they'd say it's law. But if they say something has an edict or a proclamation or an order has the force of law, that's a good tip off that whatever they're talking about probably ain't law.
We know the difference inherently between right and wrong, Michael. I mean, we do. We're without excuse. We know that. We have, and something I could bring up here, we have sodomite marriage. We allow people to kill unborn babies. Although that's not a law, we still allow it. And I'm sure that I forget what that rule is, but if something happens over a certain time period, it becomes law because it's happened over a certain time period. But we've allowed the killing of babies. We've allowed sodomite marriage. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting. They're good examples because what you're talking about is not law. Regardless of what they said in Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court said, or regardless of what any statute says, regardless of what any edict or order says, regardless of any code in state code says, none of those things can violate the Constitution or God's word. If they do, those are the two standards. When you want to take an enactment of a legislature or something or some act that a government has done, the two questions are: does this violate God's law? Does it violate the Constitution? So that's what I call there's the eternal standard and the temporal standard, right? So the temporal standard is the Constitution. These are the things that through the consent of the governed, we've said this is what these are the powers that we're going to give our government. But that's a deal, that's a contract with the people with the government. But none of those things, even if it passes that test, if it violates God's law, then it's not law. And this was the understanding of all our founders, and it's something that we've lost in America today. So it needs to be recovered, and it needs to be part of the kind of statements that your caller is talking about, and that he's sending to sheriffs, etc. This understanding of what law is and what law isn't needs to be recovered. It's foundationally it's crucial to have that understanding. Otherwise, again, you will end up having people tell you things are law, and you'll think that they're law, but they're not. And so people, you're easily deceived if you don't know the rules.
I get that. Let me ask Tom real quick. Tom.
Yeah, BJ.
What kind of responses did you get back from the sheriff? You said you had a couple responses you want to share.
I did, and it was somewhat tentative. That's what was disappointing about a lot of the responses from the sheriffs. It seems like, as Michael's talking about, they're not quite sure about what their responsibilities are, or maybe they are, but they're afraid to write it down and post it on their website what they're committed to for their citizens. I'll read you one of the typical responses here.
Okay.
This was from David Thurman of Scioto County. Dear Mr. Haviland, The citizens of Scioto County have elected me, knowing that I uphold the Constitution of the United States as well as that of the state of Ohio. As the other sheriffs have stated, I do not need to post a letter indicating that I will uphold the Constitution or perform the duties to which I was elected. And that was the tone of a lot of the, I got about 15 responses out of the 88 county sheriffs. And a lot of them responded similarly, that they thought they didn't need to post a letter because their citizens already know how they feel, that they have an open door policy, that they've been reelected multiple times. So it's obvious the citizens trust me. Those are the kind of responses I got. But to me, how do your citizens really, I don't know how my county sheriff feels about the mask mandate, the vaccine mandate.
Yeah.
You know, I'm watching videos in Australia of people, the cops coming to people's door and dragging them off to quarantine camps. And I'm sure those people didn't know how their law enforcement felt about it either until they were dragged off to a quarantine camp. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen here, but you know, it would be nice if our county sheriffs would post on a website for everybody to know exactly how they feel. And I see this tentativeness of them kind of trying to play both sides of the street, and I don't like it.
You need to write them back and tell them that. Thank you very much, Tom. Hang in there with us. Your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, Tom is exactly on point here. This is the kind of an issue that comes up for the sheriff that he does need to declare, because he can't just fall back and say, well, I've been elected twice, I've been elected 3 times. That doesn't mean anything. This is the kind of lawlessness that's going on in the culture. The sheriff needs to declare what his position of it is, especially if he's in a position to stop it, and he's in a position as the sheriff to go ahead and enforce the tyranny if he wants to, if he doesn't understand. So no, this is a place where they should declare. Look, a sheriff or any other law enforcement person takes an oath to the Constitution, and he takes it before God. So there's those 2 standards coming into play, and he doesn't take that oath to a health department official, or to a county executive, or to some governor, or to a president. He takes it to the Constitution. So many of them don't realize, and I've been on the dais and been in front and with many sheriffs who think, well, look, that's not my job to sort that out. I'm going to go ahead and arrest the person for not wearing a mask, and I'll let the courts. That's what lawyers are for.
Yeah.
That's what judges are for. No. They don't have what the fundamental misunderstanding is, that they don't realize that they are they are the constitutional officer. They need to know the rules. They need to understand what the Constitution is, what it says, and be able to act. They can't just put people's lives, liberties in jeopardy, and then just pass the buck, just punt the thing down the road. I was on the dais with a sheriff from St. Mary's County here in Maryland, and he made some kind of comment like, well, he disagreed with my view, and he made some kind of comment that he said, well, I'm going to enjoy waiting and seeing how the courts deal with these matters when they come before the courts. And I'm like, well, that's nice for you to say that you're going to wait, you're going to enjoy waiting. The people whose liberties have been violated, the people whose lives and livelihoods have been affected, the people whose businesses have been closed, etc., they're not enjoying waiting. And they deserve you to know what the rules are, what the Constitution says right now, so that you can make that decision. That you can't punt that decision down the road. So that's one of the things that Sheriff Mack, of course, and I've been with Sheriff Mack on a number of speaking engagements, and helping to make this very point to law enforcement people. Your oath is not to some official, not to some governor. It's to the Constitution.
Amen, brother. And one of the things that I have, and I'm working on this, so I can't get into a lot of detail. But one of the things that I really have a problem is Michael, we're always, we being the people, the ones I believe are on the right side, that have what I would call the spirit of the law in their heart. And that's really what is missing here, the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law, not jurish, what happened before, but the real spirit of the law. But I could go to, I can't get into a school board meeting because I don't wear a mask. And if I go and I don't wear a mask and I walk in, I'll get arrested and I'll have to go to court and I'll have to go to jail. But I'm not the one that's committing the crime here. But I'm not wearing a mask for religious purposes, for strongly held, sincerely held religious beliefs. And if somebody comes in and tries to keep me from getting those rights, Civil Rights Act of 1964 is one thing I cite as a law, then why am I the one that's being arrested? Why aren't they being arrested?
Well, you're right. The answer, I'd say, revolves around a great deal of ignorance, and of course just plain evil.
Yeah.
So plain old evil. So look. There are forces that hate God.
Yes,
They hate the existence of a country whose principles are based, whose law and government and form of government and understanding of law is based on God's law, and ours is. Now, it's not. Although that's the documents of our founding, and that's the truth. We understand that we're living in a world where that's not operative in many cases now. That's not what's going on. But that's why we have to remember. We have to know the rules. I mean, just a simple understanding with all these. You have the right and you have the duty to take care of your health. There's no the government. The purpose of government is to protect and secure God-given rights.
Yes.
It's not to protect your health. It's to protect your liberty so you can protect your health. That's what government's supposed to do. It's supposed to protect your liberty so you can protect your health. And when we allow this idea that, well, don't you see we have this emergency going on? Don't you see we have this war going on?
Mm-hmm.
We have all these. Well, in the Maryland Constitution, for example, and other state constitutions say similar things. It says this. I'm going to do this from my head here. It says Article 44 of our Declaration of Rights, which is part of the Maryland Constitution, says the Constitution of the provisions of the Constitution of the United States and of this state, being Maryland, applies well in time of war as in time of peace, and no deviation therefrom or violation thereof, based on a plea of necessity or any other plea, is valid. Nothing could be more on point. I mean, it's precisely on point, and yet it doesn't help our situation in Maryland, BJ. And you know why? Because people haven't read it. People don't know it, and leaders in Maryland aren't held to it because the people have forgotten it. It's part of our. It's been part of our Constitution for ever since just after the war between the states, but so no plea of necessity or any other plea. So there's no COVID-19 exemption to the Maryland Constitution or the United States Constitution. You can pass all these emergency statutes you want, but if the operation of how they're enforced violates somebody's constitutional rights, they're not valid.
Yep,
they're just not valid. I try not to get too in these last couple of years. I've tried not to get too wrapped around the axle about the science, quote unquote science. It's not even science, it's not science, but the fake science of this thing and the argument about what masks do and what they don't do and blah 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 blah, because there's so much inconsistency and self-contradictory stuff in there. Because even if their science was right, which is not, of course, but even if it was right, it still wouldn't be lawful because it still violates because none of that is an excuse. None of those things, none of those quote unquote emergencies is an excuse for violating the Constitution. You can't violate the Constitution. You can't violate people's rights, no matter the circumstances. As a matter of fact, in times of war or famine or pestilence or whatever, that's when you need to follow the rules. That's when the Constitution is most important. So, the understanding of where law comes from and what law is just so crucial. And I was talking about the game of Columbus. If I asked just a room full of people and said, name me the 5 freedoms that are protected by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, just list the 5 freedoms, just write them down. Okay, next question. Tell me what the Third Amendment is about. You don't have to quote it to me, just tell me what it's about. Tell me what the Eighth Amendment is about. Tell me how many articles there are in the Constitution of the United States. Tell me how many amendments there have been. Well, most people can't answer any of those questions, and they're pretty simple ones actually. Anybody that's like walking up your driveway, wants to knock on your door, call you on the phone because they want your vote, they want your help, they want your money, whatever. Simple questions about the Constitution like that are very appropriate to ask them. But you know what? You can't ask them unless what? You can't ask those questions unless
you know.
unless you know the answer, right?
Yeah.
So you can't do this job. You can't hold these people accountable unless you know the rules, unless you know the rules of the game.
Yep.
So it's crucial. And when if somebody knocks on your door and asks for your vote, one question I think is very fair to ask is ask them, what's the purpose of civil government? And then shut up.
Yeah.
And shut up and listen and see what they say. You'll get some kind of I've done this, and I start hearing about baseball fields and recreation parks, and when I ask what's the purpose of government, well, what did Jefferson say the purpose of government was? He said that there is a God and our rights come from him, and the purpose of government is to protect and secure those God-given rights. It's not to make sure you're eating your veggies. It's not to make sure you're wearing your helmet. It's not to make sure that you got your seatbelt on. All those things might be important, but your mom takes care of that. She tells you what to do in that regard.
And the state is your daddy.
The state is.
Isn't that where we're headed?
Well, yeah, that's a good way to phrase it.
Michael, and I want to get this in.
Sure.
And I want to plug what you're doing, and I want you to plug what you're doing, because this is very important. It's something that people don't understand. Not only do they understand the purpose of the law, they don't understand that it is assumed that they know the laws of the land. Wherever they are, whatever they're doing, it is assumed that you as an individual citizen of the United States already know the laws of the land.
Well, it's presumed, and you're asking me whether that's right or wrong?
Yes.
Well, the interesting thing to answer that question, you really have to define what the law of the land is. If you're talking about what people think the law of the land is, there's no way to. I mean, the statute books, you couldn't read every quote unquote piece of legislation that's been passed by the Congress or your state or maybe even your county. So we do need to know what law is and where it comes from, and we need to keep injecting that back into the culture. We need to use the situation and the circumstances of our lives, which again are God's gift to us, as a way to reestablish this understanding. Again, we've been indoctrinated away from an American view of law and government, and we need to purposefully, specifically, palpably, practically go back and pick up those pieces and put them back together, so and teach it to our children, et cetera. Because we live in a culture where we've lost the connection, or many have lost the connection. The churches are very much responsible for this as well, because they've abdicated their role of preaching the word to the civil government, right? And many churches are corporations, which is part of the problem. Because they've made a deal with the state that they're going to carry out state policy by becoming a corporation. So that's a whole other subject. But that's one big reason why churches have been gagged, or put the gag on themselves, and don't preach this understanding, the connection between God's law and our system of government. Many people, when they take our course, are very surprised to learn how much it's based on God's word, and they're as they start taking the course, they're like, I didn't know this. And then there's a period where they start to get mad and they say, oh, why didn't I know this? Right?
Yeah.
So,
you do know it. You have it instilled in you. Well, you just didn't know that you had it instilled in you.
Right.
You only got about one
more. Right.
Well, about one more minute. I don't know whether Roger's on the line. I don't know whether he wants to say something.
Sure.
I'm going to go ahead and put Roger on, I think. Roger, are you with us? I guess not. Please plug the American View, IOTC. This is very important, folks. Ignorance is no excuse under the law. And this gentleman and the folks that are with him, David Whitney being one of them, have a lot to offer that you need to consume, because you're going to be in a battle whether you like it or not. So if you would, Michael, please just plug your organizations, and thank you very much for your participation today.
Well, it's a great pleasure to be with you. And by the way, I apologize for those earlier distractions. I'm sorry about that. TheAmericanView.com. Go to theamericanview.com or just type in Institute on the Constitution.
IOTC, yes.
IOTC. And you will find us, and you'll find that we have a number of courses of instruction, including the U.S. Constitution and including how to be a good juror. The jury is an extremely important subject to understand, and how to be a good one, what that job is. And we also have a course on the duty of the sheriff, the citizen. It's called the Citizen and the Sheriff, which will be very helpful for folks. I very much so again, our website is theamericanview.com or instituteontheconstitution.com, and I'm just pleased and thank you very much for your scholarship and your dedication, your commitment to this cause.
Thank you very much. I don't have a choice. I got this itch, brother, and it won't go away. Got bit by the righteous bug about 35 years ago, and never been the same since.
Praise God.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for helping us out today.
Yes, sir.
Michael Peroutka, Institute on the Constitution, American View. Mr. Anderson, I don't know whether we have time for that quickie. If we do not, if not, we can just talk about it. I really enjoyed. I love Tom. We're going to bring Tom on the second half because he's going to talk about what he did in Washington, D.C. Last weekend and who he ran into before we get to our second guest. But I love Michael Peroutka. I love what he's doing. I love his organization. I like people like Mike that are stepping out. Look, this all comes with a price, folks, especially in today's world. You can't get away from it. You just can't. Any comments, Mr. Anderson? And please quit looking for somebody else. We need you out there participating like Tom does, like Mike does, like Scott does, and Michelle. And I'm going to forget everybody else, but you know who you are, and you are appreciated. Definitely.
Ever since I was mass-produced in a factory, people have been trying to put labels on me. Nutrition labels, expiration dates, telling me I was biologically chocolate on the inside. But deep down, I knew I wasn't who they said I was. I am a Skittle.
Part of moving forward is accepting responsibility for your past.
The people at Mars Inc., they weren't bad people, they were just ignorant. They thought they knew what candy I was just because they knew my exact chemical composition, but we are not our biology.
We're holding ourselves accountable for the way in which accurate product descriptions cause hurt and pain to the trans candy community.
I just woke up one day and realized I am not defined by the chocolate center I was made with. I am, and always was, a delicious grape Skittle. And I'm proud of it.
So, Mars has committed to never again assigning an identity to the candy we produce. Instead, we'll let each candy decide for himself, or herself, or Skittle's self, who they really are. And whatever the candy says, we will falsify nutrition information to make it a reality. Now, reality can truly be whatever we want.
I'm just free. Free at last to be me, the real me.
We're even offering every peanut M&M a total nut removal, free of charge, because they're free to be themselves, nuts or no nuts.
Having completed my transition to living as a grape Skittle, I've been so grateful for the acceptance I've found here at Mars Incorporated. Thanks for accepting a Skittle like me.
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with BJ Edwards.
Bring myself in there. There we go.
There you are.
Screen myself out. Love
there
Mike.
I am.
Love Michael Peroutka. Look, we've got two great, Brad and Michael are two great gentlemen that have been in the battle, are in the battle, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate their positive approach to things, because it like again this morning, just thinking about how positive they were. I sat on that couch and going, okay, I'm just going to say the rest of the day is going to go great because I've already got the bad stuff out of the road, right?
There
And
you go.
I'm always the type of guy who wants to get rid of the bad stuff so I can get to the good stuff. So good stuff.
Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff.
I want to bring Tom back on here shortly because he was in Washington D.C. over the last weekend and met a lot of good people. I do want to note that a New York judge did strike down the mask mandate, and there was an appeal hearing to be heard on Tuesday afternoon, but the government gave up. I mean, they've already said, okay, we're not going to do this, but the damage has already been done. And we're going to bring Tom on shortly. Tom has been part of that damage. He lost his job. We have doctors that lost their. What about the damage that this has done to the families? Huh? What about the damage that is done to the families? People have lost their jobs. They're worried about losing their jobs. What do? I went to law. I went to med school, and then I went through all the internship. And now you're going to, after 10 years, you're going to take all that away from me? Is this really America? Well, it is America, but are we making it America? Are we standing up and doing something to make sure that it continues being America? Now, California is pushing for a bill that could eliminate private health insurance. That doesn't stop. When we show up, folks, when we show up, we win. But it's not necessarily what we think winning should look like. That's the key. Hey, Tom, are you with us?
BJ?
Hey, I appreciate your participation in the first hour, and I want you to talk about what happened this past weekend in Washington D.C. There was a few doctors and a few good citizens, or was that 100,000 or so good citizens and doctors in Washington D.C.?
Well, the turnout wasn't quite as big as we were hoping for. I think they were hoping for a crowd of at least 20,000. My guess is it was probably more along the lines of 5,000 to 10,000.
Okay.
But it was still a fantastic event. And as you're talking about Michael being a happy warrior, everybody that was attending this event were happy warriors. It was really something else. And it's a critical time right now because some countries are going one way, the good way, like, the UK, England, Ireland, Denmark, Netherlands, Czechoslovakia. They're starting to see the writing on the wall with Omicron, that, the fully vaccinated are catching this thing just as easily as the unvaxxed, that the COVID's very mild. So they're starting to take away all their restrictions on masks and vaccine mandates. But then there's other countries like Austria, Germany, Australia. I've watched some videos this last week out of Quebec, Canada, from one of my favorite YouTubers. His name's Viva Fry, where he actually went to a Walmart, and Walmart right now in Quebec, you're not allowed to enter the Walmart if you're unvaccinated unless you're going to the pharmacy. And if you're going to the pharmacy, then you have to be escorted to the pharmacy. You stand in like a little cage waiting until one of the workers can take you to the pharmacy, take you all the way to checkout, and then escort you out of the store. And that's what's happening all over Quebec, Canada. They're our neighbor to the north. So we are in a critical phase right now where the United States could go either direction. We could go the route of England and Denmark and those and take the restrictions down, or we could start to follow these more draconian measures, in Austria, Quebec, Canada, New Zealand, etc. So that was one of the reasons that I felt really compelled to go, and I actually drove and took two friends of mine, Bob and Jeremy. You're seeing me a picture there. I'm holding my no vax mandate sign that I held for over 40 days here in a busy street corner in Beaver Creek, Ohio. And then one of the other guys with us had the Ohio flag, so Ohio was nicely represented. And we stood right on the steps of the Lincoln and waved that we were right in the center of the steps, so everybody could see the Ohio flag and my sign and the signs of the others with us. The one bus you're looking at there in that one photo is they're wanted posters for Fauci, Rochelle Walensky, Klaus Schwab, etc. which I thought were kind of interesting. It was a beautiful day. What we did is we stayed in Arlington, Virginia, because there's so many mandates right now going on in Washington, D.C. Restaurants, you have to show proof of vaccination in order to get served, etc. We actually said, we'll stay in Arlington, across the river in the Potomac in Virginia, where we can eat anywhere we want to go, and etc. And then we'll take the metro over into D.C. So that's what we did. As we got on the metro, we started to realize this was going to be good. Because when we got on the metro, you're supposed to wear your mask on the metro. But when we went down into the metro, everybody waiting for the subway, nobody was masked, and there was a whole bunch of people with signs and great big smiles on their face. So we all got on the metro together, and we all rode into the Smithsonian Station there, right by the Washington Monument, and came up out of there. It was just a beautiful day, as you can see in the one photo there against the monument. Nice sunny day, cold but still sunny. Like I said, the crowd was a little small. It was about 5,000 to 10,000 people, but it was really a diverse crowd. There were black, white, young, old. I think one of the reasons the crowd might have been smaller was they might have been worried about a January 6th false flag thing. They didn't want to, we don't want to have another one of those.
Yeah.
And then there was also some talk, I think, about Antifa showing up. There was only about 4 or 5 protesters to the whole thing. And so not a big deal. And they were far off in the distance and didn't bother us during the whole day.
But Tom, you went. I mean, the fears, you heard about all this, but you went.
Absolutely. You got to do that. It takes courage, right? The number one requirement for being a doer and helping these mandates go away is to have courage. If you have courage, everything else follows. So we saw lots of signs, lots of really fun. One of them said a little child was holding, "I don't want to be your lab rat." Like I said, we had the wanted posters for Fauci and Walensky, etc. My favorite sign was one that said, "The phrase 'papers, please' has never been on the right side of history."
Ooh.
I thought that was clever. So when the thing kicked off, JP Sears, who is the Awaken with JP guy, the comedian.
We have him on a lot. Yeah, we have him on a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, he was the MC for the whole event and did a terrific job. Speakers included, famous doctors like Peter McCullough, the famous cardiologist, Robert Malone, who was, one of the inventors of the mRNA technology, who's against it being used as it's being used. Del Bigtree, who is from the High Wire, who really laid into the media and said, we're going to go after not just the CDC and the doctors who've been lying to us about the data concerning the vaccines. We're also going to go after big media for their contributing to this propaganda. There was, good music. There was, unfortunately, there was a bunch of vaccine injured people that showed up. I don't say unfortunately. It's sad, because they told their stories. It's very painful to see the people that have actually been injured by these vaccines. And then, of course, the main speaker was at the end was RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Yep.
And, he's a Democrat. And it's interesting that this thing has brought together strange bedfellows, right? We have not just Republicans, but we have Democrats as well who feel that your right to decide whether or not an experimental vaccine goes in your body is your right. And he gave a very long presentation near the end, but he went a step further than the other speakers. One of the things he talked about was what's called turnkey totalitarianism. The surveillance state, digital currencies, ESG scores, social credit scores.
Yeah.
And one of the comments he made, a quote, was, "The minute they hand you the vaccine passport, every right that you have is transformed into a privilege."
Yes.
"Contingent upon your obedience to arbitrary government dictates. It will make you a slave." I thought that was a very important statement that he made. He gets it. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., even though he's a Democrat, he gets it. And he talked about 3 things that that everybody needs to remember. Number 1, every power the government takes from us, they will never relinquish voluntarily.
Yeah.
Number 2, every power that they take from us, they will ultimately abuse to the maximum extent possible. And number 3, and maybe the most important, Nobody in the history of the planet has ever complied their way out of totalitarian control. So we have to do not comply is what we have to do. We have to civil disobedience. We have to not comply. So
you're just amazing, Tom. By the way, commitment is the superfood for courage. You got to be committed. You can't, if you can be courageous, but if you aren't committed, you aren't going. It's like walking. It's like walking into on a football field with a team that doesn't think they can win and aren't committed to doing so.
Well, I'm 61 years old, and I've had a great life, wonderful life. I want my kids and my grandkids to have the same freedoms I had growing up. What they're doing now is sinister. And these vaccine mandates are the first step on a dangerous path towards totalitarianism, very dangerous path. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm committed to see that my kids and my grandkids grow up in freedom. The about 3 or 4 hour presentation, by the way, that took place that day on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, you can find it on Rumble under Defeat the Mandates DC. It's about 3 hours long on Rumble, Defeat the Mandates DC.
But
now, what's interesting,
in 10 minutes, you've given us more than they could ever want. I mean, you were there personally, and you're giving great testimony to where you, I'm sorry to interrupt you. That's what I do.
No, go ahead.
Your testimony in 10 minutes is worth much more, as much, let's just say at least as much as that 2 hour or 3 hour or 4 hour video that you're recommending. I'm not saying don't listen to it, but here's a guy that was there. And that's what you need to do, folks. You can't, if you sit and watch that 2 or 3, 4 hour video and you're entertained by that, shame on you. Shame on you, especially if you weren't there, especially if you're not participating in your own community. Shame on you. You don't deserve to watch that. I'm sorry. Making friends again this morning, Tom.
Well, I understand where you're coming from. It should inspire you to go out and want to do something yourself. You know, whether that's go to a school board meeting and object to CRT or object to them masking your child in school, or I'm not even sure, some school boards may be talking about requiring the vaccine for the kids to go to school next year. Yep. This criminal. And that brings me to the second video that I'd like to turn your folks on to. The next day, those same doctors like Peter McCullough and Dr. Malone, etc., and lots of other doctors, they met with Senator Ron Johnson in the Senate, and that can be seen on a Rumble video called COVID-19, A Second Opinion. You know, the first opinion, of course, is the narrative of the CDC that you get the shot, get the vaccine. But this is called COVID-19, A Second Opinion, right? Because these doctors have data to the contrary. And if you go there, that's about a 4.5 hour video in itself that Senator Johnson had with these folks. One of the people that was on there was really interesting. His name was Tom Renz. I think it's spelled R-E-N-Z.
From Ohio.
He's a lawyer from Ohio. Yes, you know him. Yes, he has gotten in touch with 3 military doctors. 2 of them are lieutenant colonels who have given him access to what's called the DMED database, Defense Department medical database. And what they saw is increases due to the vaccine injury in cases over the year 2021. They have the database for there's a 5-year average for the years 2016 through 2020, and they looked at 2021 data, since the vaccines have been out this year. And here's what they noticed. They noticed compared to the 5-year average of 2016 through 2020, during 2021, they saw a 300% increase in the number of miscarriages of military women. They saw a 300% increase in cancers among military men and women. And they saw a 1,000% increase, 10 times the amount of neurological issues, like especially in pilots, over the 5-year average of 2016 to 2020. Now, the only difference between the year 2021 and those previous 5 years is in 2021, we had the vaccines. And the other, in the 2016 through 2020, we didn't have the vaccines yet. So it's pretty obvious that these dramatic increases in miscarriages, cancers, neurological issues, etc., are due to the vaccines. There's a report that the DoD, and so, this is a very intricate database. The DoD keeps very precise records on what's happening with all of its patients in the TRICARE system. They do a report. It's called Project Salus. They do a weekly report that they actually present to the CDC. And in their report dated September 28th of 2024, that weekly report stated that there were 71% of the new cases were fully vaccinated people. 71% of new cases of military people were fully vaccinated, and 60% of hospitalizations were fully vaccinated. What's interesting about that statement is during that same week, Dr. Fauci was going on TV saying 90% of the people in hospitals are unvaccinated. He got that report. He knew that report. He knew that data, and he went out and lied. He said 90% of the people are unvaccinated or in the hospitals are unvaccinated when he knew that that's impossible based upon the military data he got from this Project Salus weekly report.
He who controls the information controls the world. Tom, we're going to have to cut this short because we do need to get to our interview.
Yes.
I appreciate, as usual, you helping me to co-host the program.
Well, hey, BJ, my pleasure. Just one more quick thing.
Yes, sir.
None of the vaccine manufacturers, Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, et cetera, Johnson & Johnson, none of them want to release the raw data that was used to compile their clinical trial results and submissions that they then used, to get granted the emergency use authorization of the products. And remember, it's we, the public, that are the ones that paid the billions of dollars for these vaccines. And now we are the ones that are taking all the risk of taking these vaccines. We demand to have that data. And Senator Johnson is going to try his best to get that data. So there are people working at the federal level for us. That's all I have to report. Thanks a lot, BJ, for having me on.
God bless you and Godspeed. Keep up the good work. Wow. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get to our second guest, another lawyer. Yeah. I talked to 2 lawyers today. I don't know. Will I ever be the same, Mr. Anderson? Who knows? Anyway, great conversation with Brad, and please stay tuned. This is very good stuff. Very positive stuff. We are in control. We are in control. We do have tools. We've been sending to you for the past 5 weeks what your tools are. It's now time, after we get done today, to go out and use them. And I want to hear from you out there next week. I want to hear what you've done, what you've learned, and where you're going from that.
Heck yeah! Heck yeah! Heck yeah!
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with BJ Edwards.
BJ Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. Phase 5. The legal system under trial. I think Mr. Anderson's having trouble with our studio again this morning. Happens. That's okay. Put it in the microwave and see what happens. Or send it to me and I'll play it. Folks, I apologize. We were having technical difficulties with it. We're going to try to get the sound on this. I don't know quite what's going on. Try to get that fairly. I appreciate your patience with us. It happens. It happens. Yeah. I was going to read this after the video, but I'm going to go ahead and read it now. It's from our good friend, Coach Dave Dobmeyer. It's something he wrote some time ago. And it's something that I want to encourage someone else to do something. Coach writes that, as most of you are probably aware, I'm pretty active in the cultural front. Although there are many folks who realize that our nation is at risk mainly because of the moral condition of the citizenry, there are few people who are actually interested in doing anything to stop the moral rot. Very few. As my buddy BJ likes to repeat, as goes the church, so goes the nation. As goes the pastor, so goes the church. Most of the problem in this nation can be laid at the doorstep of the self-interested American church. Actually, I'd say the American Christian church has an identity crisis. Not only do they have difficulty providing an accurate description of the king they claim to serve, but they have an even greater inability to articulate to others the job description of their congregation. About 3 years ago, I was awakened to the prospect that the Supreme Court of the United States was preparing to legalize an atrocity called homosexual marriage. I'd gotten wind that there were several radical anti-Christ judges who had wiggled their way into the 9-judge panel in Washington, D.C., and that they were intent on redefining the central institution responsible for the advancement of Western civilization. So, being a bit naive and a reputation as a nuisance to the forces of darkness, I thought perhaps that I, as a servant of the Most High God, should do all that I could to expose the unfruitful works of darkness. Some friends of mine joined me as we visited a local mega church in Columbus, Ohio. That was a vineyard church here that Coach and I and others visited, Mr. Anderson as well. And basically what we were trying to do is get the church to speak out against these atrocities, to speak relevant sermons, to get their folks, their members, their congregation to do something other just to go to Sunday morning or Saturday evening church, whichever is more convenient for you, and sit there and be entertained and be upset if when you came back, nothing happened. You weren't assailed. You weren't asked to do anything. Anyway, joined a mega church in Columbus, Ohio, and attempted to awaken them to the railroad train running down the tracks in hopes that they would help us stand and fight against the forces of darkness. Well, much to my chagrin, my buddies and I were confronted by that same local church, summoned into court for trespassing. Sounds like Washington, D.C., doesn't it? And slapped it with a restraining order, prohibiting us from setting foot on the church's campus ever again. We were just looking for church leadership to help us fight against the destruction of marriage. I mentioned to one of the church elders, "Sorry, buddy," he hissed at me as he ordered us off the property. "You're going to have to look for someone else to help. You're going to have to look for someone else to help." Discouraged but not defeated, I visited another church leader in the Ohio area and invited him and several of his congregation to accompany us to Washington, D.C. for a prayer vigil outside of the SCOTUS building. I mentioned 2 Chronicles 7:14, explained that maybe if we appealed to the heaven of God, he might give us a reprieve against the sodomite agenda. "I'd love to be part of that," said Coach, my pastor friend lamented. "I would love to be part of it, Coach Dave," my pastor friend lamented. "But unfortunately, this is the weekend of our annual ice cream social. Perhaps you can make some calls and you could find someone else."
The Bible, you find out that God's not.
In late June of 2015, just as I had suspected, the SCOTUS poked the church in the eye and legalized homosexual marriage in all 50 states. Being a student of history and a lover of the Constitution, I knew that the courts cannot make law, so I began to make another manhunt. This time looking for a few good men who could stand up and defy the ungodly, unrighteous, illegal act of the SCOTUS. You think you're ready to go, Mr. Anderson? I'll finish this if you are. But basically, I contacted some more famous professional Christians in our area and invited them to drive to Nashville with me to represent the body of Christ before the Nashville legislature. I was there with Coach and demanded they defend traditional marriage. Most of the leaders refused to take my call. Although one of the nice secretaries did pass along.
Ready to go.
Okay. Pass along a message from her pastor. It seems that they don't get involved in culture. And that although they appreciated my spunk, I'd have to find someone else to go with me. 8 weeks ago, I learned that our local Target store had just announced a policy permitted men to walk into women's restrooms. I was greatly concerned about the danger. I organized a protest and called several pastors to come and help with a public awareness project outside a local Target. Unfortunately, most of the senior pastors were unavailable to go, and they referred me to someone else, who, by the way, was not a member of the congregation. Let's go ahead and get our interview with Brad. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Okay. The sound will be a little compromised, but we'll go with it.
Going on around us.
We deem the time because the days are evil.
The Bible has not changed.
Boldly proclaim the restoration.
In Oakland and New York and other places.
So I have Brad Dacus on with us from the Pacific Institute, and he's going to help us get a little better along with all this. Are you not, Brad?
Oh, I look forward to it. Thank you.
We are in a mess, Brad. I mean, as I look across the Fruita Plains, I see a lot of rotten fruit, to be honest with you, but I don't see where people are getting justice. And I see a lot of injustice in my eyes. Am I wrong in seeing that, or is that actually happening here?
There is injustice. We saw it blatantly when our cities like Portland, Seattle, New York, and Chicago, etc., allowed people to just engage in rioting, breaking into stores, stealing, criminals being let go deliberately, people who committed murders being let go by the Los Angeles district attorney, by the district attorney in Oakland and New York and other places. So we have seen tremendous injustice, not because our Constitution was flawed, but because the people who've been elected to serve on the city councils and those places, the mayors, that they're very flawed and they're very twisted. And because of that, tremendous injustice has taken place. We at Pacific Justice Institute right now, in fact, are actually very positive about our federal courts. Our federal courts and this Supreme Court, BJ, this is the most pro-religious freedom, pro-parental rights, pro-sanctity of human life, specifically pro-Constitution, original intent, strict construction, than any Supreme Court ever in my lifetime. And we are very, very aggressive because of that. We have over 50 cases right now. It's actually much more than that in active litigation. We have 20 offices coast to coast in 16 states. We have more offices than any other organization of our kind. And we have full throttle forward in these offices in our litigation because we know the fantastic justices that were appointed by former President Donald Trump, and we're taking full advantage of it at PJI.
Yeah, there is some light there. We're speaking with Brad Dacus. He served as legal assistant to U.S. Senator Phil Gramm before completing his Juris Doctorate at University of Texas School of Law. Brad coordinated religious freedom and parental right cases throughout the Western states for 5 years prior to founding the Pacific Justice Institute in 1997. And as Brad had mentioned, PJI has a network of hundreds of volunteer affiliate attorneys and handles more cases on the West Coast than any other legal nonprofit organization of its kind. And I imagine next to New York, that the West Coast is probably a nice place to have a law firm that's looking for justice.
Yeah, there's a reason we started in the state capital of California, in Sacramento. That was our first office. Then we have 5 offices in California, but the rest of our offices are in blue states for the most part, or dark blue cities like Miami, located in a red state. And Atlanta is another example. We also have one in Boston and New York and Philadelphia, Detroit, Chicago, and many other places. But it's really keeping us very busy. And one thing that's real important as we move forward, for example, is that like Roe versus Wade, I believe that Roe versus Wade is going to be overturned by this Supreme Court. I think we've got the 5 votes. If not, dealing with the Mississippi, the Dodd case, where Mississippi banned abortions after 15 weeks of development in case a woman's life is in danger. That's the exception. So with the exception, so if they don't do it in that case, then they will do so in the Texas case, and the other cases similar to Texas, where abortion is banned, except when a woman's life is in danger, when the heartbeat of the unborn, the preborn, can be found. When that happens, I believe it's not if, when it happens, then it's going to be brought back to the states. And that's where our offices, so strategically placed across the country, and our attorneys are going to be very busy working with the legislators to help them adopt solid pro-humanity, pro-preborn protection legislation, and at the same time going to bat on a state level in hostile dark blue states like California, New York, and Illinois.
One of the reasons that I really wanted to get you were my number one choice for this program, is because it's just, you'd have to know me, Brad. I'm the type of guy that says behind every rainbow there's a cloud. I always see the issues out there. You, on the other hand, take a different approach to this, and it's more of a coaching approach. Is when you get into the game, you know you can win. You're not worried about all those little areas out there like I am. Okay. So, and I love that about you, and that gives us a little balance in terms of what we're trying to do with our program, and I do appreciate that.
Oh, certainly. You know, some of the reasons I'm the way I am is because, number one, I've seen in the past 30 or 25 years, 30 years, I've seen cases won before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Defending the rights of people, for example, in homeschooling, defending "In God We Trust" on our Constitution, defending the rights of churches to overcome hostile local governments in the San Francisco area. We've seen success even when we have outrageous judges for 2 reasons. I think number one is we've got a powerful God that makes the donkey speak. And I never forget that. I've seen it happen. And then second is the fact that we at PJI, BJ, we do top-notch legal work. The other side, like the ACLU, they can be really sloppy, actually. But we do top-notch work with top-notch attorneys, A grade, and it really makes a big difference in moving forward. So I think that, that combined with the courts that we now have in the federal courts, because of the fantastic historic appointments by President Donald Trump, we really see a dark light at the end of the tunnel. But for President Trump's election in 2016, we would have a totally different scenario, and you wouldn't see an optimistic. You'd see a bunker down Brad, who's talking about how do we, mitigate the latest tyranny that's taking us down. But we've seen great successes. I think one example, if I may, just last year, for example, we had all the churches, synagogues, they were shut down. It was outrageous. And we at Pacific Justice were very strategic. We didn't just file a knee-jerk reaction and, after 1 week of shutdown, only to get it shot down. That's what some groups did, and it was terribly sad. We advised them not to do that. But we were strategic. We waited for a clear disparity between the churches and all these other entities that then were allowed to open up, like liquor stores, pot shops, okay, restaurants. So when that happened, we knew it was the right timing, and it was the same time that Amy Coney Barrett was being put on Supreme Court. We moved aggressively. We lost at the federal court level. We lost at the Ninth Circuit. We then filed an emergency writ, like emergency appeal to the United States Supreme Court. Extremely difficult to have them ever hear an emergency appeal. Usually they take months and several years sometimes. Well, they took it up, and in 3 days, they gave us 6-3 an order against the state of California, Governor Gavin Newsom, saying, open those churches now. It sent ripples across America. And that's just one example where I know we would be in a different situation had we not had President Trump's appointments. We'd still have churches shut down all across America, and the left would be gleeful about their continued oppression of people of faith and people who have strong convictions about being able to worship a real and living God.
But we do have a lot of damage across the USA. I talk to people every day, doctors, nurses, people that are working on their jobs that have lost them, that no longer have a career because of COVID, because of this I call it COVIDism. It is a religion. It takes more faith to believe in the COVID story than it does to believe in Jesus Christ. I mean, it really does.
Right.
Especially the emergencies. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. It has been frustrating for me as an attorney because in law school, the left or the liberals would have their arguments and you'd have yours, and there'd be logic and presuppositions, and you could argue, and now it's just been very frustrating because now it's like the opposing side, those who are, force everyone to be vaccinated, force everyone to wear a mask. It's not about science. It's not about logic. It's not about reasoning. It's almost like a sci-fi movie where these aliens come and make people zombies and they don't think. It's been very, very frustrating in that regard. Now, we have Pacific Justice Institute. We don't get angry. We sue. So what we did is we, on day one, on our website, pji.org, we put up the resources that people need to be able to file a religious exemption and to be able to know what their rights are. And consequently, and then from there, we also went on to represent large groups of employees who are being laid off. For example, Amtrak, they told all their employees, if you're not vaxxed, you don't keep your job.
Yeah.
We stepped in, we represented them, we got all their jobs back. Same with Children's Hospital of Orange County. They told all the doctors and nurses, they says, you've got to be vaxxed. That's it. You lose your jobs. We stepped in. We got all their jobs back. Another example was Ascension Church, Ascension Health Centers. Excuse me. They told 57 different hospital locations, second largest medical institution in the United States. They said to all of them, you have to be vaccinated or you all lose your jobs. They were already on unpaid leave. We stepped in, we filed a lawsuit, we got all their jobs back. We're now litigating against school districts. We have a class action for firefighters in Seattle. We have lawsuits from coast to coast. Right now, aggressively going to bat for people of faith to not be purged from the workplace because of their faith, not because of logic. We have a large lawsuit down in Miami where the governor there in Florida, DeSantis, says parents have a right to decide whether their child wears a mask at school or not. It's the parent's decision. Palm Beach School District said, oh no, we know what's best. We're going rogue. We're requiring all kids to wear a mask no matter what. Our attorney down there, Alexander Bumbu, out of our office in Miami, has filed a major lawsuit there. We think it's going to have an impact across the country. So we're very, very, very aggressive in our litigation as we speak. Schools, churches, we're going to bat for doctors, nurses, firefighters, police officers. We're suing the Los Angeles Police Department on behalf of police officers who've been told they're going to lose their jobs. They sacrifice so much. They're going to lose their jobs because they're not back. So I encourage people, even in the military, we're assisting, if they have any questions in this regard, to go to our website, pji.org. And for parents who are about to have their children forcefully vaxxed, BJ, we're telling them to go to our website because they can register there to get the personal belief exemption form that we can equip to protect them so that they can have their child protected under existing law in California and Washington State and other blue states that we think are going to be following like suit. And it's, once again, it's completely illogical. This vaccine that we have now does not prevent transmission, does not prevent people getting this virus, which is now 99.9% is now it's the Omicron. The Omicron and the COVID like it are not a serious threat to children. In 2020, more children died when they got the flu than when they got COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So this is and then the risk, the studies now are coming out in terms of the risk for children, for minors, for people in their 30s and 20s and under who are not obese and have underlying conditions. These kids are assuming huge medical risk, long-term risk. Well, we at Pacific Justice are defending those parents and trying to protect as many children as we can through these resources on our website, free resources, pji.org.
We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I do want to talk about this timely, as far as the program's concerned, this timely resignation for the Supreme Court justice, and get your opinion on this, your positive opinion on this. The next Supreme Court justice. Oh my goodness. Are we panicking? If you would, Mr. Anderson, please. BJ.
Last call with BJ Edwards. Real talk about real life.
We're on the phone with Brad Dacus from California, and he's involved in the courts in California. What is that website again, Brad?
Yeah, it's pji.org, and they can also sign up to get our Legal Insider newsletter. It's short, it's to the point, it's once a week. We have so many cases across the country. People really want to know what's going on the ground floor. This is where to go. Which is pji.org. And also, if they want to support our ministry, we're nonprofit 501c3. We greatly appreciate those who particularly want to become a regular monthly supporter. Any amount, they can do that as well at pji.org.
How do you get your financing?
Moms and dads, grandmas and grandpas, a lot of churches, very appreciative out there that we've helped. That's the bulk of how we get our funding at Pacific Justice Institute. And we're growing. We're sort of unique too, because we not only have more offices across the country than any other organization, we also are unique in that we don't just cherry pick high profile, big bang or big game cases. We work hard to make sure that everyone gets help, that no one's left on the side of the road. We do it all without charge, so people don't have any out-of-pocket costs on their end. This is what we do. And we're also very broad. So we do religious freedom, parents' rights, sanctity of life, some of the things that we do, like, for example, let's say a Christian or a Jewish person is from a communist country or a radical Muslim country, and they're going to be sent back, and they're going to be they're going to be killed because of their faith. We protect them from being sent back to certain death. We do that uniquely because no one else was doing it.
Wow.
We also go to bat for parents when social workers are knocking on their doors. We're the only organization on national scale that gives emergency counsel to parents on how to make sure their children are not taken by social workers, and oftentimes permanently. We have a 12-step procedure on our website. People can download that for free on our website as well. So we're involved in areas where we're meeting needs that otherwise would not be met moving forward, and we do so joyfully.
Good for you. Good for you. My organization is the Natural Family Foundation. I'd love to get into your family background. What makes you want to do what you're doing? I don't know whether we're going to have time to do that today, because I do want to talk about the Supreme Court justice. And I also want to talk about, I'm really tired of playing defense during this whole thing. I want to see some offense. And I'll give you an example. I can't get into my school board, which I pay several $1,000s for, and I don't have any children in the school. I can't get into the school board because I won't wear a mask. And I won't wear a mask for religious reasons. And of course, I could go in. They said last time I went in, they said, well, they were going to arrest me for criminal trespass because the superintendent said I couldn't come into a public building. Now, I know some of the laws that are around this. I could have got myself arrested and then defended myself. But what I would really like to see is that policeman who threatened to cuff me and throw me in the car, and the superintendent who told him to do so, I'd like to see them be thrown in jail and then have them defend themselves. Am I crazy? Come on, you're an optimist.
No, You're not crazy. You're not by any chance living near Austin, Texas.
No, but I could be. It's a very liberal college town in Ohio. So
okay, in Ohio. Okay, gotcha. Because we have a case just real similar to what you just described in Texas as we speak. Right now, the man's being criminally prosecuted. We've offered to file to represent him in civil lawsuit against the school district. So that kind of tyranny is taking place. Just to see it so blatantly exhibited by the Department of Justice under the Biden administration, and them asking the FBI to use our federal resources not to go after terrorists, but to monitor parents at school board meetings in localities across America to possibly prosecute them if they seem threatening or overly offensive. That is outrageous. So we have put the nation on guard and put these entities on guard, the FBI, the Department of Justice, that if they choose to do that, they can expect to have a counterpunch by Pacific Justice Institute through our attorneys all across the United States on behalf of those parents. This is very important, and I think it's going to backfire on the left, on the liberals this next election, by a lot of angry moms and dads out there saying enough is enough. We need to restore respect for parents' rights and their ability to redress for their school boards across the country.
Well, what would happen if school board members or superintendents, it was the onus is on them? In other words, they're the one being attacked. They're the ones being arrested. I see that would really change. We see a lot less of that going on if they had to, they know, well, okay, are you chicken or not? Are you going to get arrested or not? It's up to you. You might win, but it's still up to you. You've got to go through the HELL, and we're just going to sit back and watch, and you got to get the lawyers, and you got to spend the time. We're just going to sit back and enjoy our tea and trumpets.
Yeah, and also just FYI, you say you're in Ohio. We have an office in Cincinnati, and Whitney Webster, she's a fantastic attorney and litigator, very sharp, and we're serving the entire state of Ohio with that office, Columbus, Cleveland, Dayton, etc. So never hesitate to contact us if we can help you in any way, or anyone you know in Ohio.
All right, Supreme Court Justice. Now, I can hear Fox News now. Actually, they're already doing it now, and the fear and the bad that we're going to get a even more liberal, although what difference would it make? Even more liberal Supreme Court justice.
Right. Yeah. I think it's important to note that Justice Behr is someone who is a moderate liberal. Several cases, there's 3 cases where he voted in favor of religious freedom and against the ACLU's position. So that if we could have him replaced with someone who is like him, I'd be very happy. Based on what we have to look at, the Democrats control the Senate barely by 1 vote, and then we have the White House, of course. So they're the ones that make the decision on who's appointed. If the Biden administration tries to go too far to the left, then there's a good chance we may see Senator Manchin say, okay, I can't support this one. And I bet they're going to be working with him to try to say, okay, is this a thumbs up? Because the last thing we want to do is go through all the motions only to have it shot down, and then have the election happen, and then Republicans get control, and then they say, no way, we want someone who respects the Constitution in the Senate, from the Senate's perspective. So but what really bothers me is the fact that it's so openly racist in its criteria. Not just racist, but also sexist. Because Biden, even this morning, he came out and he said, I'm going to keep my promise to be a bigot. In other words, he says, I'm going to keep my promise to make sure whoever I put on the Supreme Court is a woman and Black. Where did that come from? The Equal Protection Clause bans that. Title VII bans that. So, whether or not the Supreme Court and our court system would be, agree to have an injunction against him by choosing someone based on that, practically speaking, he would say, okay, I'm not going to use that as a criteria, but then he uses it as a criteria in a selection and just denies it. lies and denies. So I think what we're going to need to watch, though, is what kind of black female is he going to try to put on the court. Now, I've seen some great, there's like Janice Brown, I believe her name is. She's absolutely fantastic, but she respects the Constitution. She believes in the First Amendment, religious freedom. She won't be one of the ones chosen. But there are a number of them that have been put out there. One of them is just a hardcore radical. Another one's totally unpredictable and unstable in terms of how she's gone, very radical. Another one is a liberal, but has some character, reputation behind her. So we're just going to have to see where it goes. And I know that it's so narrow, the margin. The Democrats can't lose one single senator.
Yeah.
That I think there's going to be some intake from the Biden administration as to who is likely going to be able to make it through without being shot down and being another defeat for a president who has been the most had the most defeats, has the most failures of any president, I believe, in U.S. history during their first year in office.
I refer to Joe Biden as former vice president, and that's about as far as I'll go. I won't call him anything more than that. I'll probably call him less than that, but former vice president is as far as I'll go with that in terms of, but the problem with Manchin is that it will be a black, it will be a female, and he's going to be a racist and misogynist if he doesn't vote for that candidate. Agree?
Well, I say no, and the reason is because he's a senator of West Virginia. 2 out of 3 are Republican. It's conservative. So his constituents aren't going to look about the stereotype. They're going to look at, is he going to vote for someone on the Supreme Court that is going to be a radical liberal, a leftist who doesn't respect the Constitution? And I think Senator Manchin can easily come out if Biden chooses one of those who are just really radically to the left, sort of like a Sotomayor, who's very dangerous to the Supreme Court in the future of our Constitution. If he chooses someone like that, Manchin can just say, you know what? I wish the president had chosen someone else. This is not the proper candidate. They can say racist. He says, well, I know there's other candidates that I would give consideration to, like so-and-so or so-and-so. I wish the president would re-examine his list and reconsideration. There's other candidates that meet his criteria of being a black female that are qualified. And I'm very open to entertaining, and I understand that that's the president's choice. I don't rebuke him for that. I just want to make sure it's someone who's qualified and respects the Constitution. I think he'll be fine on that.
Should he say that now before that ever happens? Wouldn't that be smart to do that?
I think it would be. Now, the one problem though with Senator Manchin is that he is, based on his past record, has been very acquiescent to the choice of the president, which is the historical role of the Senate. They're very acquiescent unless the person is just not qualified or something. So he may just stay along that track and just go ahead and vote for whoever the president chooses. But there's a number of senators who are up for re-election. If they vote for someone like some of the candidates on the short list, they're going to be hurting their re-election. So it's not just Senator Manchin. There's also a senator from Arizona. There's also from Nevada, and and other places where there's going to be some tight races, and it could have a big impact on some of these senators who are already expected to lose. So we'll have to wait and see, but people need to be paying attention. The good news is we've got 50 votes there in the Senate. If they stand their ground, I think that there's a good chance we could have someone who is not as just totally way out there and radical leftist as most of the candidates on the short list happen to be.
What about Elizabeth Warren? She's a woman of color, isn't she?
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't think she'll be chosen on the court. But it's it's interesting too, because sometimes people, they'll make stereotype. If it's a black female, she's going to be liberal. But I have seen some cases where Black females have been appointed as judges, but they have a high respect for the Constitution, religious freedom. They have a heart for civil liberties. It's kind of that healthy liberalism, if you will.
Okay.
Like Alan Dershowitz, for example, that type of a mindset. So we may end up with someone like that, and that would not be dangerous. That's someone who respects the Constitution and actually takes it very, very seriously in terms of due process and things like that. That's not a dangerous appointment to the Supreme Court moving forward.
Brad Dacus, Pacific Justice Institute. We're due radio, Brad. I get into the trenches a lot, and I learn a lot that way. I've been at this, by the way, for around 35 years, and it's been an interesting ride. And I've seen a lot of drastic changes. You're a blessing. You're a light in this dark world. For my doers in the audience, any recommendations with regards to the legal system, with regards to what you do and what you oversee? Any recommendations for them?
Yeah, I will say, in terms of parental rights, I encourage them to download that resource, 12 Steps to Protect Your Children from CPS or social workers. Download that, put it on the refrigerator. Make sure your children, if they have children, if you're a grandparent, make sure that that's distributed. That's so important. Also, parents need to be proactive to protect their children from being forcefully vaccinated. Even if they're in a seemingly red state that may not mandate on a state level, we still have an opt-out forms customized for all 50 states that can preemptively put the school district on notice not to vaccinate their children. I encourage that as well. We also have information on how to start a church homeschool co-op. These are booming across the nation. We have 12 separate models that churches can use to provide a backdoor to the tyranny that's taking place in our public schools as we speak. And also, I just want people to know that I do a lot of guest preaching. I'm commissioned for ministry. I'm very much an evangelist, if you will, expositor, verse by verse. And if any church would like me to come in and guest preach, I do that a lot, and I do it all without charge, joyfully, because I love to be able to preach the word. I'd love to see people come to Christ. And if they want to have me come speak at their church or their group anywhere in the country without charge, they should just contact our office, pji.org, and just ask to talk to my assistant, my scheduler, Lana, and she'll be happy to make arrangements.
And she's very easy to work with. You have the core of it. You have the family. That's where that's the first institution God created for the benefit of man. Natural family right behind me. That is, and the fathers need to take the leadership role in this. Don't kick mom out of the house and tell her to do it, guys. You have to, and don't tell me you're too busy. There's an old saying, if you want something done, get a busy man to do it. That's what you need to do, guys. That's what you need to do. Thank you very much, brother. We really appreciate your time. Appreciate what you're doing. I may give your Cincinnati office a jingle and maybe play a hand up here in Ohio.
That'd be great. We're here to serve you, and thanks, BJ. Thanks for what you're doing on your show.
God bless you, brother, and Godspeed.
You too.
I've been blessed. Boy, I'm telling you what, I am so blessed. Compared to where I could be right now, I made a life decision several years ago. And I'm so ever grateful for making that decision. I get to speak to Brad, but not just because who Brad is. There's people that I meet every day that in the efforts to turn this around that have been such a blessing for me, and it'll be a blessing for you. Look, you don't have to give your all, but you have to make a sacrifice. You have to be committed. Doesn't this upset you? To me, it's like fingernails on a chalkboard. All this injustice, this insanity, this bizarre world that we're in. Don't you want to do something to change it? We're giving you some tools. We're giving you contacts. Contact me, contact Mr. A. I don't care. Contact your pastor. Really doesn't make any difference. And remember what Brad said about the family. I asked him what we should do. Where'd he go to first? He went to the family, didn't he? Because that's where God went to first. We really want you to dig in. And yeah, we can find, I love watching the chat. I love the passion in the chat. But we can all find something that we can help with somebody else in terms of what they're doing, like our enemy does. They are combined in hate. We need to be combined in love for the truth, love for righteousness, love for our Creator. And that is much stronger than hate. Hate's just what's more evident now. But we can wash that all out. We can quench that. But we got to do it. You got to get out there and be a doer, folks. That's what this whole January program has been about. Doing. God love all of you. I appreciate you. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week, and want to hear about what you've been doing next week. What new tools? You have a better idea? Come on. I want to hear it next week or the week after that. Love you all. Thanks for listening today. Thanks for putting up with our technical issues. You got a good technician that can help it out? Send us our way. We use all the good partners we can. Thanks again for listening. BJ Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. This has been your last call.
Join us next week for Last Call with BJ Edwards.